sometimes there are people, I'd call this toxic positivity. We just say, I'm going to heal, I'm going to heal, I'm going to heal. And you say it, but your subconscious and your nervous system doesn't actually believe you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast, where we focus on detoxification, on anti-aging, and bioenergetics, and higher level topics to help you on your health journey. So today we have a fantastic guest. His name is Dr. Josh Axe. I'm certain you've heard of him. He has millions of followers across YouTube and social media and extremely knowledgeable. And so he is going to be talking today about mindset, about how he overcame a devastating illness that left him unable to walk for a year. And he's going to talk about how prayer and mindset and nutrition helped him overcome his grim prognosis that he was given. Lots of really fantastic tidbits in this show today. And we also talk about birth control pills and how that can contribute to an increase of 283% in hypothyroidism in women taking birth control pills, and what birth control pills do exactly to your body and this cascade of negative effects on your health. And we talk about the keys to longevity and lots of really interesting research that's cited on the show today. Our guest today is Dr. Josh Axe, and he's a leadership expert, entrepreneur, and physician. And he earned his doctorate from Palmer College and his Master of Science in Organizational Leadership from Johns Hopkins University. And Josh is a co-founder and CDO of Ancient Nutrition and founder of draxe.com. And his company ranked in the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies 2 years in a row. And he's also the best-selling author of Eat Dirt, Keto Diet, and Ancient Remedies. And his latest book, Think This, Not That, will be available nationwide in April 2024. Josh is also the founder of leaders.com, an online platform that provides the latest on breaking news, leadership, business, and wealth. And he regularly teaches lectures and trains entrepreneurs on leadership, mindset, and self-development. He's married to his wife, Chelsea, and they have 2 daughters. They live in Nashville and Dorado, Puerto Rico, part of the time. And they enjoy cooking, staying active, swimming, cycling, and prioritizing time for their faith and family. Dr. Axe, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Wendy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have a new book coming out. It's called Think This, Not That. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and why you wrote it?
Yeah, well, one of the things I've realized over the years is that food is a very powerful form of medicine, but mindset medicine is really just as powerful, if not more powerful. So one of the things I get through in the book is how to heal with the power of the mind. Also, how to set your purpose, find your identity, have breakthrough goals, visualize to realize your dreams, and a lot of those things that I think are really deep and personal and that really matter to who we are and us being successful in life. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that today. Also excited to talk about detoxification, balancing hormones, longevity, and some of those different topics. But yeah, I actually, when I wrote this book, I went through the hardest situation. It was the hardest time of my life. I did this. This was about a year and a half ago. I was sitting down with a doctor. Actually, I wasn't sitting down. I was in a hospital bed because I was just diagnosed with a spinal infection. And this is sort of crazy because a few months before, I was throwing my 2-year-old daughter in the air. I was squatting and deadlifting. I could do a triathlon. I mean, I was in great shape. And a doctor sat down with me and said, Josh, listen, this spinal infection is so bad now that you are likely going to be permanently disabled. He said, you could die. Your best case scenario is you get back walking again, but you're still going to have chronic pain every day.
I mean, I just want to stop you for a second. Coming from someone who's such a health influencer and at the peak of health, I'm sure that was just really, really difficult to digest. I mean, for anyone, but especially someone coming at the peak of their health and so knowledgeable about health. It's very humbling.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was. And I think, there's probably a lot of people that don't know I went through this experience. So I didn't put out content. I mean, I've put out lots of content because I love educating and teaching, and I've done this my entire career. But I didn't put out content for about a year and a half because of this scenario. A lot of people didn't know I was going through. I actually went in. I had injured my back years before, and I did a lot of things to get it better. Got a lot better, but still I had this nagging issue, and I got stem cell done, and it really helped. And then it was probably about 90% better. And I thought, I'm going to get a stem cell injection done one more time. This is where they take your bone marrow, concentrate the stem cells, re-inject it in the injured area. So it was my own cells. Well, they went and did this, but something didn't feel right a few days later, and then I kept feeling worse and worse. Finally, 3 months later, I woke up and I literally couldn't walk. The pain was so excruciating. I thought, well, I just heard it a couple weeks later. I thought, I still can't walk. Finally, I had to call an ambulance. They had to come pick me up. And by the way, I was living in Puerto Rico at the time. Our family moved there for part of the year. We lived between there and Nashville, Tennessee. And they brought me in, got an MRI, got the report back, and it said I have a spinal infection throughout my disc and my bone, and even into the spinal canal, there was an abscess growing.
Was there a connection to that with the stem cells? Was the stem cells just...
Well, again, I don't know if it was stem cells. I don't know if when they were injecting the needle somehow. And by the way, this was not like a hole-in-the-wall clinic. This is the most, I'd call it the most prestigious and the largest stem cell clinic in the world, probably. So this wasn't, again, this were very good doctors. So fast forward again, I was sitting here with this doctor, and Wendy, there were emotions I'd never experienced before that experience. I had never felt what hopelessness felt like, never felt despair. And I had about 48 hours where it was just very, very difficult to get that sort of diagnosis. But then I really had to touch back into my foundation, and that's God, and say, God, you know what? You're bigger than my diagnosis, and I believe you're going to heal me, and I'm just going to do everything I can to heal. And so I decided, rather than sort of being a victim or feeling like I was a victim, to say, you know what, I'm gonna do everything I can to conquer this and to heal. And so that's what I did. Now, I will say that the infectious disease doctor said you need to be on antibiotics for 3 months. Okay. Now, I knew what sort of damage that would do, but I also was smart enough to know, well, I have to kill this infection. And so I did a lot of research myself right before I got on the antibiotic, and I found this study that said that if you get in a hyperbaric chamber for every day for 2 hours, you can cut your antibiotic time down dramatically, down to 4 weeks total rather than 12. And so I did that while I did the IV antibiotic. I got in a hyperbaric chamber every day for 2 hours. I then got IVs, such as Myers cocktail with glutathione and vitamin C and a lot of B vitamins. I did IV silver. I did ozone in an IV, and I did a lot of these natural procedures. And then the only thing I ate was pretty much meat and vegetables and berries. And I followed this protocol. And after 4 weeks, we were able to completely kill the infection. However, the disc and spine heal very slowly. And so it was a full year before I could walk again. And so just about this time last year, I was off my walker just for a month. And so and now I'm happy to say that I'm back probably close to 90% there. I actually played pickleball for the first time yesterday, and I was like, let's see how sore I am. I feel great.
Yeah, I'm playing for the first time Saturday. I'm pickleball.
Hey, there we go. So I was so excited. I bought a racket last night. So anyways, excited to get in it and play some more pickleball, and just started running 2 weeks ago again. So all that being said, I'm already much better than the best diagnosis that I got. And I really praise God, because I feel like he led me to the right people, the right resources, and was part of that process. And I think prayer played a big role in that as well. But I learned so much along the way. I'm actually grateful for the experience from the standpoint of I was on my not walking for a year. I had plenty of time to do research. And so I spent hours and hours a day researching longevity, because that's another thing I just sort of realized at the time, and even the past year, is that I want to be, after not walking for a year. I mean, after not walking, I wasn't like, I want to go out and do a triathlon. I was like, I just want to walk. And so for me, longevity became such a priority that I started studying a lot with cellular medicine and the mitochondria and how we actually heal with cellular medicine and promote longevity. And so that was a big thing now that I'm able to do for myself, for my family, for patients, for people I work, I work to help educate, help them extend their lifespan and heal. And so anyways, I learned a lot in the process. From that standpoint, I'm grateful for it. And then actually I wrote the book, Think This, Not That, while I was down, because I really felt like, along with the practical things that I needed to do physically, there was such a spiritual and mental and emotional component to healing. And so I think this book is a really good resource for people who want to experience a breakthrough in life, in their mind and spirit. And that's sort of where that book was birthed out of.
Yeah. And I think I'm right there with you. Like, prayer is a very important part of my health journey as well. and asking for very specific things that I'm looking to accomplish with my health and other areas of my life. And so when you you approach it with prayer, you approach it with mindset. Can you talk a little bit about your, the things you talk about and think this, not that, in regards to mindset? Because I think many people, they have a physical health issue. They only go for physical approaches because that seems perfectly logical. So tell us about the mindset or other ways that you influence your body to heal.
One of the studies that I was already somewhat aware of, or I guess historical facts that led to studies, and that was during World War II. There was a doctor named Dr. Henry Beecher, and he was the practicing physician during World War II for a lot of fallen soldiers. And when they were on the battlefield, at one point he ran out of morphine. Now we all know morphine is an incredibly strong pain-killing drug, and when they ran out of morphine, he told the nurse, he said, "Listen, we have to give these soldiers something," because, I mean, again, they were losing limbs. I mean, we're talking about excruciating pain here. So he said, "Okay, I want you to fill this vial, this syringe with saline, with salt water, and inject it into them, telling them it's morphine." They did that. Those soldiers experienced 30 to 40% of them experienced almost the exact same level of pain relief as if they were actually getting morphine. I mean, to me, if you really sit there and think about how incredible that is, that your body can create these neurochemicals to relieve pain that are as strong as morphine. Now, that very same system that we're talking about has caused people to have cancerous tumors one day, and then weeks later they get an MRI or a PET scan and they're gone. That same system within our body, spirit, mindset, whatever you want to call it, that also has allowed people to either live longer or die early or reverse disease or causing disease. And so it's really important to understand, first off, this is a really important topic, and it matters because your life can depend upon it. Your health depends upon it. I mean, there was a study, so that's placebo effect. Here's the thing that blew physicians away after the placebo effect. They kept doing it again, saying, well, this was a fluke. And they saw the same results every single time. No, the placebo is sometimes as powerful as the drug itself, sometimes more powerful, depending on how strong the belief is about what you're actually taking. And so it's really incredible. And there are actually ways to harness and boost the placebo effect. One of those ways is knowing exactly what you want. Okay, so I did this. So when I was unable to walk, one of the things I wanted to do desperately was play with my 2-year-old daughter. I wanted to throw her in the air in the pool again. So I pictured that very specifically. I want to do that. I want to run again. I want to play pickleball. I saw myself doing that in the future. So if you know what you want to experience, so those fallen soldiers, I want this pain to go away. Okay, that's step number one. And maybe for you listening right now or watching this, you might say to yourself, well, I have hypothyroidism. I want to reverse that. Or I have autoimmune disease. Or I've got chronic fatigue syndrome or brain fog, whatever it is. That's the first thing you know is I want that symptom gone. Okay, what's the next thing? The next thing is you want to be emotionally driven by this thing to where that vision you have in the future where you're pain-free, you experience that now, the emotions you're going to have when you get to that place. So when I'm throwing my daughter in the air, it's like, okay, joy. Even though I wasn't able to do it yet, I experienced that same joy and satisfaction knowing, okay, this is going to happen. I can't wait for it. And the third thing that you can do is create a plan of action. Here's the thing. Sometimes there are people, I'd call this toxic positivity. We just say, I'm going to heal, I'm going to heal, I'm going to heal. And you say it, but your subconscious and your nervous system doesn't actually believe you. Versus if you lay out a specific program like I did of saying, okay, I want to be able to play pickleball in 1 year. Okay, how do I do that? Okay, I'm going to start getting in the pool and doing that type of physical therapy first. Okay, and then I'm going to start doing banded exercises. Okay, and then I'm going to do weight training, and then I'm going to eat these foods. I'm going to do these therapies. This is how I'm going to get in this place in 1 year. My nervous system said, okay, I can see if I do all that work, do all those things, where that's going to help me heal and get there. And so those are some ways, but I would say that that's an important part that I think, Wendy, a lot of people miss is that, again, a lot of times people just run to changing their diet as they should, but we leave out some of the most critical components of healing when it comes to the mind and spirit. Even if you look up the dictionary today, what is health? You're going to see it say health is being whole in body, mind, and spirit. And so it's a more sort of, and I want to mention this too. When you look at one of the oldest forms of medicine, Chinese medicine, they're very aware of this. I mean, we've sort of lost this in our medical system today. It's very sort of cold and non-spiritual, non-emotional, non-mental. It's very body and spirit are separate. When you look at Chinese medicine, they call them the three treasures, and these words might sound funny. They're just a different language, but it's Shen, Qi, and Jing. And basically, Shen is your spirit, which then impacts your Qi, which is your mental, which then impacts your Jing, which is your physical. And so if you're not taking care of your spiritual and mental health, well, your physical is going to suffer. And so you always want to be caring for all three.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. Yes, yeah, and we know that emotional trauma can cause up to 65% or more of physical health issues. We're very interconnected, mind and body. And I think, when people go to their doctor with a health issue, and like you, they're given a kind of a prognosis where really negative outcomes, and they're told, oh, you have 3 months to live, or, people with this don't live more than 5 years, or what have you. I mean, it literally, people will believe that and will follow through with that. Will die within 5 years or after 3 months because they believe that, because that's what they were told. And I think that people have to be very careful when they are told that, because I personally believe that almost every health issue has a solution. Every single one, with the power of bioenergetics, with the power of mindset, with the power of prayer and calling out to God to help me find the tools that I need or the people, the resources to heal myself. And so I think people have to be very careful and know who they're speaking to. If they're speaking to a conventional medical doctor, that they may not be getting, they're getting a myopic view when you're limited by that person's toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So let's talk a little bit about, maybe some things that you did to help with your healing. Like we talked about mindset. Yep. Is there anything else that you talk about in your book that helped you kind of overcome this really, frightening diagnosis and health issue?
Yeah, let me talk about some things I did in my book, and then maybe some things that are more nutritional based that I think people might benefit from as well. So, I was just very specific about what I wanted, and I had to overcome having any victim mentality, because it's so easy to get sucked into why me, or for other people, bad genetics, or this doctor made a mistake and blaming them. I had to forgive him and say, and I even, it's interesting, he texted me, this was some time ago, and he said, you probably don't want to hear from me. I know he felt bad for being partly responsible for what happened. And I said, you know what? All is forgiven. You know what? I absolutely understand. And I'm just praying you and your family are blessed. And we got to chat a bit, and it was a good, I think, experience for both of us with it. But and he's a great guy. I really, really like him and his family. But all that being said, I think that I was able to forgive. That was something that was important myself, because I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have got this done, and that physician, and that was important. I think forgiveness is really important for healing. I think the other thing I did was I tapped into my purpose. I think that really fueled me. Let me go back to victim mentality first, though, and say this. I decided I would not be a victim. I was not going to make excuses. Like, it would have been very easy for me to be crabby, not walking for a year. I had to have my father-in-law, really did, and then my parents took care of me for 3 months, along with my wife, and then my wife and father-in-law took care of me for the rest of the time. And so, I decided I was going to be incredibly grateful and thankful. I was going to bear my suffering nobly, because my 2-year-old, and then turning 3 at that same time, daughter was sitting there watching me. My family was watching me. Friends were coming over sometimes. And I tried to not complain one time. It was really this sort of thing of like, I'm going to be healed. I'm going to be back. and then just living with purpose. So I know, and a lot of people don't fully recognize this, but it's so important. Complaining and playing the victim or talking about your condition is the worst thing you can do to heal. If you truly want to heal, don't complain about your problem. Now, listen, there was a couple times where I was in an emotional battle because, again, you can imagine how bad the pain was. And I chose not to take painkillers because I didn't want to hurt my liver. So I couldn't even roll on my side at times. It was so bad. And for that whole time, I never walked. I couldn't even sit. So when I went someplace, I had to crawl. But a couple times I said, Chelsea, honey, babe, come here. And I just said, hey, would you pray for me? Or can I just vent for 2 minutes with you? So I'm not going to say I never said anything negative and didn't complain at all. But I tried to say, listen, is it okay if I vent for a couple minutes and just get it out and then be done? Okay. And I would do it in that way, or do it with God, in prayer. But all that being said, I think that I had to overcome any form of being a victim mentality because that totally crushes your healing. I had to stay positive in my mindset, really harnessing the placebo effect. I also really tapped into my purpose. I had a friend stop over and he said, hey, what have you been doing? I said, I'm writing a book and I've been, working on actually a second book now and doing this, and this. And he said, wow, gosh, if I were you, I would just be eating Cheetos and drinking Mountain Dew all day. And I said, well, you know what? I actually feel like doing that, but I have so much purpose that sort of overrides that sort of lethargy and makes me want to go out there and do the most I can with my life more than ever before. And so that's another thing I really get into in the book is here's how to find your purpose and live out your purpose in the strongest way possible. I coming out of this, I have a feeling that I don't want to be great as much as I want to be good. I want to be a good person. I want to bless people. I want to operate with high integrity and character. I want to make the earth a heavenly place. I want to love people. And if I can do that even just with my family and friends, that means more to me than going out and building $1 billion company or whatever it might be. That's not my highest priority. It's being good. And I think right now culture praises the great, but doesn't praise the good near enough, the really good people that are out there today. We try and vilify everybody on both sides. And so I think that's really unfortunate. So that's another thing, but I really get into the book. Here's how to become a hero and overcome victim mentality, how to find your purpose, how to build a rock solid identity in who you are. A lot of people have that. You mentioned childhood trauma. So many people have these health conditions because of an identity issue, and that's a big thing as well. So that's, I really get into how to do that in the book too.
Yeah, I mean, you have inspired so many millions of people. You have incredible content on your website. I look on your website all the time because you have such thorough articles, all backed by, evidence-based, backed by research, and just so it's. I love that you're kind of have a heightened sense of wanting to continue to do that after this incident. And it would be so easy to fall into a victim mentality, poor me, fear, dread, hopelessness. But, and I think people don't realize that is hard. It would be hard to be in that mindset and to maybe not get the outcome that you had. But it's also hard to do the work as well, the work to get out of that and, do something differently than what our brain is trained to do, which is look for problems and look for maybe go into a depressed state, which our automatic state, when we're in a lot of pain and don't have a good prognosis, but you just have to choose your hard. Both outcomes are hard.
Right. That's right.
But let's talk about food. So you have a lot of incredible information on food as medicine on your website. What did you do as far as your diet with and reduce inflammation and do different things with your diet?
Yeah, I was really focused on consuming foods that support cellular regeneration. And that's one of the keys. If you think about it like this, a lot of our organs, not all, but most of them are new every single year. Your liver regenerates and is new, your pancreas, your adrenal glands, your reproductive organs, a lot of our body is complete, our blood, our digestive system, they're completely new every single year. And so if those are regenerating and healing all the time, well, why do you still have the hypothyroidism, or why do you still have the insulin, resistance? Why is that happening? It's because you're not consuming the right foods. It's the biggest part of it for most people. And so, my diet was really a lot of lean meat or meats that were high in omega-3 fatty acids. It was some berries or figs or pomegranate, really, or kiwi or some pineapple. These are fruits that have certain enzymes that help reduce inflammation. And then it was a lot of steamed and cooked vegetables. And then I did have some potatoes on occasion, that sort of thing, sweet potato or white potato. But that was the basis of my entire diet, is really that right there. And I took omega-3 fatty acids. I did high-dose turmeric. I did boswellia. I did ginger and galangal. I did a lot of reishi mushroom and turkey tail. And then I did a very high-dose probiotics. And so for a lot of people, getting on an antibiotic, again, by the way, I had not taken a medication since I figured since I had my wisdom teeth removed when I was 19 years old and I was 42. So this was, it'd been a long time. But that was the thing I was most conscious of, is I need to protect my cells because antibiotics are very hard on those and they're very hard on the gut. And so I did also a lot of glutathione and their precursors like N-acetylcysteine, milk thistle, those things. And I actually did, after I got off the antibiotic, well, during it, I would do about 100 to 200 billion CFUs of probiotics a day, along with prebiotics and postbiotics. But after I got off, I did 1 trillion probiotics a day. And so that's very high compared to most people. I mean, most people don't take over 100 ever. This was 10 times that, 100 trillion or 1 trillion. I think that was a big part of me healing and getting my gut health back so quickly. And my health back is really resetting that gut microbiome. So that was a really, really big part of detoxifying my gut and cells, of helping set up my body to win. And my bowel, I never really had loose stool. Most people their gut would be an absolute wreck for months. I talked to someone else who had to do this, and he said for a year, I mean, his gut was absolutely destroyed.
I want to give thanks to one of our sponsors, Ionize Me Max Ionic Foot Baths. So these are the foot baths that I personally use and recommend to all of my patients. And if you're looking for an effective way to detox the body that's easy, that you can do at home, doesn't take any time out of your day, and you pull all of these toxins in your body into the water, you want to be doing a foot bath. So these are fantastic to flood ions into your body through the feet and neutralize toxins. And they can help with pain, with fatigue, with brain fog, with weight loss, even with swelling. They're great at reducing swelling, getting the lymphatics flowing, and giving you liver support by pulling out toxins through the feet and into the water. And they dramatically increase mobilization and flow of toxins into your urine and stool for 2 to 3 days after you do the foot bath. So they're not just coming out in the water. Get yours today at healthandmed.com. I think people don't realize after they take antibiotics, they can decimate at least half of their good gut bacteria. It's just devastating.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize too, you don't have billions of probiotics in your gut. You have hundreds of trillions in your gut, probably. I mean, you definitely have at least trillions. I mean, it's so doing billions, if you've been on an antibiotic, I mean, it's not I mean, you also need prebiotic fiber, and those probiotics can definitely grow and multiply a lot. But I think you want to do a very, very high dose if you've ever taken an antibiotic. And some people don't realize, you might say, well, I haven't. Now, most people have taken an antibiotic sometime in the past 5 years. But even if you say, well, I havened taken an antibiotic, well, do you use a hand sanitizer? Is your water completely clean to where there's no chlorine in it? Is every food you eat organic? Because 80% of the antibiotics given are given to livestock via cows and chickens and the animals we eat. So people get so many more antibiotics than they think they do via not just the prescription, and even birth control. Certain medications, in a way, act as microbiome. Not just, I mean, destroy is one word, but basically it alters it greatly. And so I'm a big fan for detoxification, for longevity, for just healing the gut, of ultra high dose probiotics. Because if you would drink a big thing of goat's milk kefir, there are trillions of probiotics in there. So it's actually much higher as a dosage than most probiotic supplements today.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of tend to skip the probiotics. I go for the keepers, the coconut water keepers, the raw krauts and things like that, and just dose up every day. Yeah, and so I'd seen you on another podcast where you talked about birth control and the statistics on how that can contribute to depression, which really rang true for me because I was on that since I was a teen. My mother was terrified of me getting, having a pregnancy like she did as a teen. And so she wanted to prevent that. But I spent my all my 20s with a moderate level of depression, and that it just really hit me like a ton of bricks that you're mentioning these stats on how birth control pills can contribute to depression. Can you expand on that?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things people don't realize, and the one other thing I hit on is hypothyroidism. The statistic is something like if you've taken an birth control long term, your chance of getting hypothyroidism goes up by like 283%.
Like, hello. Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. It was the hypothyroidism, which I dealt with my whole life as well.
So when I first opened my functional medicine practice in Nashville, and I used to have a brick and mortar office, now I have a virtual clinic. It's the Dr. Axe Clinic or the Health Institute. So I still work with practitioners to see people. But when I was my biggest shocker when I was 26 years old, I graduated, I went and started seeing patients, was how many women had hypothyroidism. That was sort of mine. I was like so many. And then the other thing was depression, anxiety. A lot were on antidepressants and anxiety medications. And one of the things I also started realizing over the years was this tie to methylation. And what happens is in the gut microbiome. So when you take an antibiotic or take birth control, okay, you wipe out a lot of good bacteria and you cause yeast and candida to overgrow, okay, is what starts to happen. And what that will do is it will decrease your nutrient absorption to where you can't absorb B vitamins very well. And it affects a lot of things, by the way. I could go on all these tangents about epigenetics and how it affects that too. But let's stick with sort of methylation here. And let me give you an example with one study. There's a study out of Stanford, and they found that if you take a probiotic supplement, your levels of B vitamins that you're absorbing into your cell and blood go up by 50%. So there's a really dramatic increase. I mean, that's huge. Think about that. I mean, that many more, double the B vitamins that your body has. And you have to have these B vitamins to run a process in your body called methylation that creates neurotransmitters, including glutathione. So if you want to detoxify, you use your body's most powerful detoxifying agent, you have to methylate very well. And you need certain nutrients to do that. And you need vitamin B2, B6, B9, B12. And that's just for creating the neurotransmitters that are important for mood and also for creating thyroid hormones. But there's a whole nother part of it then where you also need some zinc and magnesium and iodine and selenium. And that's for also creating glutathione, which is important as well. So all that being said, if you are deficient in any one of those nutrients, and it could be that you maybe are even taking vitamins, but your gut's not absorbing them. So that's why, again, going back to this probiotic discussion, it's so important even for detoxification, because your body cannot create the antioxidants it needs to detoxify internally if your gut microbiome isn't healthy. And then you can't methylate properly to create proper hormones without this as well. And so one of the things I've had a lot of patients do is do high-dose probiotic, including their diet. So I typically have them do like a coconut yogurt or kefir or something like that, and some other probiotic-rich foods. I have them take a probiotic supplement, a soil-based supplement, and then I will have them take like a methylated B complex that has all these methylated nutrients in it. And then sometimes I'll also have them do a glandular, which might have liver and organs in it, just because, I mean, the reality is it's actually probably nature's methylator in terms of what it's going to do for your body and system. So I'll get them on that. I mean, the results are typically just amazing, being able to do that for some people who struggle with hypothyroidism and depression and anxiety. The results are really, really positive.
Yeah, I mean, there's millions of women on birth control, and yes, it has a purpose. We know we need birth control for absolutely, But yeah, I think a lot of women, including myself, suffer those chronic yeast infections and candidiasis.
And let me point out as well, another important factor, part of what it does when you get depleted like that is it affects your body's metabolism and increasing your core body temperature. So that's why people with hypothyroidism, they tend to, they have a colder internal body temperature. Now, that doesn't also mean they couldn't have hot flashes and get hot sometimes, because their body isn't strong enough isn't correct. It's one system of their body is not strong enough, or it's so depleted that it can't regulate body temperature properly. But that's part of what's going on. And so I do, if somebody has hypothyroidism and they're listening to this, you should do a lot of things to warm your body internally. Drinking ginger herbal tea, getting in an infrared sauna is fantastic. Fantastic for those people. You would want to be careful and probably never do cold plunge unless you're going to do a hot tub right afterwards, or do contrast therapy, because your body temperature is already cool. But it really affects them. People don't realize taking a birth control depletes your body of vitamin B1, B2, B3, B6, B9, B12, zinc, magnesium, and probiotics. And so those are all the things you need for neurotransmitters and thyroid hormones. And so it's, birth control, the reality is when somebody takes a medication, all of the side effects are not on the bottle. There isn't a single medication that doesn't deplete your body of certain nutrients. And if you don't go and then replace those nutrients, which still sometimes it's almost impossible because you're disrupting the gut. So even if you take them, you're not going to absorb them well. But birth control, it's one of the worst drugs out there in terms of what it does for disrupting the gut and your cellular health.
Yeah, well, thank you for that really clear illustration. I'm sure there's a lot of light bulbs going on for some of the listeners. And so let's switch over to some keys for longevity, some of the things that you learned about what we need to do to fuel our cells, maybe throw in some info about detoxification in there. We
Sure.
talk a lot about that. But what are some like the really key insights, maybe things that aren't so common that you learned about how to improve longevity?
Yeah, well, let me talk about food, and then I'm going to talk about spiritual practices and more of the mental, and then I'm going to also talk a little bit about I want to talk about exercise here. Let me just mention this. There's a great study on this for longevity, which I'm going to bring this up because you had mentioned you played pickleball earlier. They did a study on the sports and athletics, forms of athletics that increase your lifespan the most. Number one, as a category as a whole, was tennis, badminton, and pickleball. So playing racket sports more than any other sport by far increase your lifespan the most.
That's why you see all these old people, all these old elderly people playing tennis. They're still doing it, in their 80s.
Well, it's amazing. And they get to, and when I read the study, they said there were several factors involved. One was hand-eye coordination, and the other one was in reflexes. So that's very important for aging slowly, is having quick reflexes, so you don't fall. I mean, there's all kinds of things it's preventative for. The other thing was it's a it's not as cardiovascular as, say, running, but it's still cardiovascular fitness, and you're actually using your legs quite a bit. And the last one is, though, it's community driven. If you're playing double pickleball with somebody or doubles tennis, there's bonding, it's fun, it's competitive, it's keeping yourself sharp. So it was by far the most. Nothing else as a sport was even close to that. I want to say the second after those racket sports was, and I might get this in the wrong order, but it was either swimming or cycling. I want to say it was swimming was next. We know that's great. It's a full body activity. It's very good for lung health. It's very easy on the joints. And so swimming was next. And then I want to say cycling was after that. And then after that, it was soccer. And then after that, I want to say it was like weight training and walking. Okay, those were the things that, and you'll notice there, that even though golf is a sport, it wasn't on the list. Basketball wasn't on the list. Of course, football wasn't. I think that actually would probably age people. But generally speaking, neither was cross-country running or triathlon. So again, those are the things, if you're saying, I want to extend my lifespan, you want to play racket sports. You can swim, you can cycle. Most people may not play soccer. I played it growing up and I loved it. But anyways, that might be harder. But again, probably it's a lot of legs, kicking, can be good. And then, of course, as we talked about, it's a little bit of weight training and walking too, especially walking. There are other longevity studies showing that walking is tremendous, especially if you can do it where you walk more briskly and if you can walk up and down hills. So that was very good. Now, from a nutritional standpoint, in terms of longevity, I think it's really important that we increase our cellular mitochondria. Okay, your mitochondria are like the power plants of your cell. They're the engines. They're what drive and create energy for your body. And I think in Chinese medicine, the way they would explain this, I remember one of my two favorite acupuncturists in the world. This one I'm going to refer to, his name is Zion, but he's this amazing man from Taiwan. And when I first went to see him, I'd been traveling a lot, and he said, your battery, he said, your battery is down here. It needs to be here. And I said, okay. And they would call that qi in Chinese medicine. But what they're really looking at from Western medicine is your cellular energy, your ATP, the health of your mitochondria. And that's also tied to adrenal function, how well your adrenals are doing. But picture your body like that. Like if you have now, phones don't do this as much, but if you've ever driven a golf cart where the battery is low, it starts putting along and doesn't have much energy. Think about your body in the same way. And for a lot of people, hypothyroidism is like this. When you have hypothyroidism, your thyroid and your adrenal batteries tend to be very low. And there are certain herbs, foods, lifestyle practices that start to build up that battery. And then all of a sudden, boom, I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of women reverse hypothyroidism. And it was because I'm not just giving you a random diet or supplement or pill. It's no, we're very specifically going and treating the root of the issue. We're going to warm the body and we're going to drive the battery up. And in Chinese medicine, they actually call hypothyroidism a qi and yang deficiency. They call it kidney, but it's really adrenal gland. So qi, that's cellular energy and connection to the adrenals. And yang is heat. It's your body's ability to regenerate. And so those are the things we got to drive up in the body. But for longevity, again, it really is tied to that qi. And so adaptogenic herbs are going to be very high on that list. Reishi mushroom, cordyceps, but most of those medicinal mushrooms are going to be high. Herbs like ashwagandha. There's a berry called schisandra that's used in Chinese medicine and very good for immunity, very good for kidney health and adrenal health. That's going to be on that list. Rhodiola rosea, ginseng, very good for men, especially over 50, for building up that yang energy. For women, dong quai, very good also for building the blood. That's actually good for almost all women, especially if you have any low energy or borderline anemia. But a lot of those adaptogens are going to be at the very top of the list. And then also clinically, when you look at the studies, green tea, especially matcha, is going to be very, very high. It contains a compound called EGCG, which reduces oxidative stress. That's one of the biggest things that causes us to age more quickly and then also leads to inflammation. This is also why hyperbaric chambers can be really good for people for regeneration, getting that oxygen and reducing some of that within the body. This is also why actually even hydrogen water can reduce some of that oxidative stress, and so that can be good. But I would say adaptogenic herbs, vegetables, they're going to have a lot of those phytonutrients, especially the green leafies. Those are going to be good for a lot of those things to activate glutathione production. Berries, they're going to have those antioxidants that reduce the oxidative stress as well. Okay. And so the foods that I think are the best for that, again, are berries, acai, maki, goji berry, noni, as we're looking more of the exotics, blueberry, blackberry, raspberry, tart cherry, pomegranate, and figs are going to be the high. So there's a dark blue, blacks, and purples, reds. Those are sort of fruits you want to get a lot of when it comes to anti-aging, according to the clinical literature. And then after that, getting some of the omega-3 fats, doing things like bone broth, good sources of collagen. But really, it's berries, it's adaptogens like mushrooms, and those doing lots of herbals. It's the vegetables, it's wild organic meat. That's really, in a nutshell, the best diet for really driving forward with longevity. And last but not least, when it comes to the mental, spiritual side of things, having a sense of purpose in your life. There was a study that found that when somebody retires from work, if they don't find something else that's deeply purposeful in their life afterwards, they tend to die earlier, a lot earlier. And so, because again, if you don't feel like you have a sense of purpose, that there's something spiritually and mentally that's affecting your body physically. And so I think knowing this is my purpose, this is what I'm called to do. And you don't have to think, there's not this, doesn't have to just be one thing. It could be serving others, loving others, and making earth a heavenly place. If you are doing that and you have something that you can volunteer for, whether you get paid or don't get paid, either way, that you're driving towards, that increases longevity. And then the next thing here, and last thing I'll mention, is community. One of the longest studies ever done at Harvard found that the number one thing of longevity, more than anything else I've talked about today, is community. If you have a sense of, I've got supportive community, virtuous people around me, that's iron sharpens iron, boom. I mean, that's huge for increasing your longevity and the length of your life. And so doing everything you can to get tapped into sort of that community is, it extends your lifespan more than anything.
I want to give thanks to one of our sponsors, Pure Body Extra Zeolite. As you know, toxins are all around us and in the food that we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, and you can do something about it. With over 1 million bottles sold, Pure Body Extra Zeolite is changing lives with its natural detox. It's a nanonized zeolite that's proven pure and optimized to remove the toxins that have been building up in your body. And just a few simple taste-free sprays a day, and you can detox every single day. Get your bottle at thegoodinside.com. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there is such an epidemic of loneliness going on,
That's
sweeping,
right.
Our country and the world. And there are so many different ways that you can combat that. There are so many amazing communities and pickleball leagues, or whatever,
Sure.
your church or whatever. There's lots of different wonderful like living communities. A lot of just a lot of different things like that people can seek out. And then let's talk about how toxins age you. Can you discuss that a little bit? Because I don't think people realize the impact that all the different heavy metals and chemicals and glyphosate, et cetera, the impact they're having on, being a catalyst for aging our bodies quicker. Can you talk about that a little?
There are several pathways from which toxins age us, but just to talk about a couple of them. One, internally, let's say you eat a food that has glyphosate on it, okay? Well, the first area that's really going to disrupt is the gut microbiome, okay? So there are studies showing, I was actually just talking to one of my closest friends, his name is Jordan Rubin, about this, and we were talking about how there's studies showing that glyphosate damages the cells in the gut. And so not just it doesn't only kill the bacteria, but it also then starts to damage the gut and the cells itself. And then from there, what's going to happen is you won't be able to absorb nutrients. Here's the other thing, though, that a lot of people don't realize. You also won't be able to create the right nutrients. So your gut bacteria create nutrients, whether it be butyric acid, certain B vitamins, even neurotransmitters like serotonin. I mean, your gut is it's a manufacturer of nutrients. Most people think the only place I get nutrients is when I eat a food or take a supplement. No, your body, your gut specifically, creates vitamins and minerals and nutrients. So if you have a toxin, especially on a food, and you consume it, and that'll start to wipe out the good bacteria, damage the gut cells, and disrupt your body, creating a lot of those things I had talked about earlier with methylation, a lot of the B vitamins that are responsible for eventually creating glutathione, which is your body's master antioxidant for detoxification. And so there's no doubt the food we eat has a big impact there via that pathway, via the gut. There's also the pathway, of course, of airborne toxins that you're going to have, which affects the lung alveoli. And then that's going to then cause systemic inflammation and inflame, your lungs, which is then going to keep your lungs. Your lungs are actually a major detoxification organ as well. And so it's going to damage those in the process and then even affect the blood. And so that's going to be a major problem, even affecting your oxygen levels. And that'll cause you to age. I mean, one of the biggest factors that cause you to age is, of course, even to die is when your blood becomes less oxygenated. And so that's very, very important as well.
Yeah, and the oxygen, it's the main fuel for the mitochondria. That's their main fuel. The sun too, as well. But
and then there's actually the neurochemical pathway, which is if you have negative thoughts, if you're sitting there, if you're angry at somebody or you hate somebody or you're unforgiving somebody, your body will actually start creating chemicals that are actually toxic to your entire body. And that's a whole nother. I mean, so there are a lot of pathways of this. I think the most common pathway we're aware of course, is the oral pathway and what it does to the gut microbiome. There are so many things like heavy metals. There are so many. I mean, medications are probably the biggest thing that is toxic to people, that it's disrupting their detoxification. People today think I'm taking an aspirin and this is good for me. Taking NSAIDs is the 15th leading killer. It's very toxic to your liver and your kidneys and your intestine and your stomach lining. So no, it's a toxin. Birth control, I mentioned. I mean, again, people think, oh, it's baby aspirin. It's not. It's like a vitamin. No, it's not a vitamin. So all that being said, that is the single biggest form of toxin that we've probably taken that we're unaware of, at least, are conventional medications that your doctor prescribed for whatever condition you have. And then alongside that, it's going to be the foods that we spray in our produce. Now, the greatest form of toxins from food comes from our meat and dairy products. Now, if meat and dairy is organic and grass-fed, they're not going to have, those are clean and those are fine. But if you're eating conventional meat or conventional dairy, I mean, there was a study out of Spain that found that there are about 21 different medications found in animal, non-organic animal milk. Even things like estradiol. So for women, that's really bad because that's going to increase your risk of estrogen-based cancers. It's also going to increase your risk of infertility because if that gets too high and progesterone gets too low. For men, it's going to cause more feminine characteristics and it's going to cause testosterone to drop. So again, I don't think people realize how disruptive these chemicals are. That I'm just eating, non-conventional meat. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, and you've talked about this on your show, I'm certain of it, but it's the bucket effect. It's not a big deal one time, but if you do it consistently time after time after time after time, you accumulate these toxins and your body can't handle it. And eventually it starts disrupting your hormones, your gut, and of course your body's ability to even cleanse itself of other things. So
yeah, I know when you're taking medications that your liver has to process, hey, guess what? The detoxing you could normally be doing with all the influx of toxins we have on a daily basis, that takes a back seat because it's dealing with the medication. So people are taking 5, 10 medications every single day and just watching their health, take a nosedive.
Yeah. And listen, I know there's a time or place to be on something for a period of time.
Yeah.
But the problem is that people go to their doctors today and their doctors will say, you've got to be on this medication the rest of your life. Well, I mean, if somebody goes in, I know this is a basic one I've hit on several times, but I help so many women with this, and it's they'll come in and they're on hypothyroidism medication. Their doctor acts like, first off, you can't do anything about it. We can only adjust your medication. But if they would actually get to the root of the issue, a lot of those women could. Or same thing with antidepressants. I mean, okay, maybe if somebody's having a major episode, there's a few month period where you do it with a medication. But at the same time, there should be counseling. There should be dietary changes, lifestyle changes, finding your purpose, all those other things so they can get off of it. But most of the time it doesn't happen. It's, hey, you need to be on this drug for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Axe, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was such a good show. You are so full of knowledge. I mean, you have millions of followers across so many platforms for a reason. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And why don't you tell us where we can get your new book, Think This, Not That?
Yeah, the new book is bookstores nationwide. It's also on Amazon.com. You can just go there and look up Dr. Axe, Think This, Not That. And we've got rave reviews. It was a New York Times bestseller. If you want to read a book that's really deep, meaningful, it's going to help you live a more significant life, live out a strong purpose, and help you grow more, check it out. Think This, Not That on Amazon. And then also I'd encourage people to check out my podcast. It's called The Dr. Josh Axe Show. And you might also just search online on YouTube or Apple, Dr. Axe. Maybe you want to learn more about methylation. Well, I've talked about it. You can look up Dr. Axe methylation or Dr. Axe hypothyroid just on YouTube. Or again, check out the podcast. We've had so many great guests and topics there. But those are probably the two best places to find me. I do a lot on Instagram too. That's just at Dr. Josh Axe there too. But Wendy, thanks so much for having me. It was a joy. Great questions, and I was excited to share. So thanks again.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Dr. X. And everyone, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox podcast, where we have experts from around the world talking about, detoxification, anti-aging, and bioenergetics, and some of these higher level topics to really help you give those missing keys that you're looking for on your health journey. Thanks for tuning in.
The Myers Detox podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.